Welcome into the ring. It's another weekly champions. We're running down the week of professional wrestling here on the Fired Up Network and Wrestling Spotlight, joined by a couple of repeat guests on the Spotlight. We have Sonny, the ManEagle Cain, trained by the Russian Bear Ivan Koloff. He wrestled the territories back in championship wrestling from Georgia, back in the glory days of the territory. Sonny, thanks for joining us again.
My pleasure, sir.
And Marc Madison, the publisher, editor-in-chief of the Pro Wrestling Post, is joining us. Marc, thanks for checking in. It's a busy time as both All Elite Wrestling and the WWE are coming up to huge events. The biggest, the grandest stage of all, Wrestlemania, coming up here in just over 2 weeks from when we're recording this. How are you feeling, Marc? It's the regular season of pro wrestling now.
For sure. No, feeling good. Feeling good. Super excited about what's to come. Really busy times. There's Wrestlemania and then AEW Dynasty's right around the corner from that.
Yeah.
Going into April, it's super, super busy.
And the NWA is rolling too. We have had a couple of feature interviews with the National Wrestling Alliance. We just had Danny Deals on, their color commentator. NWA is riding some momentum with their new distribution contract on the CW app. And Sonny, when you were in the organizations, I guess the closest thing at this point would have been Starrcade. Does everybody in the company kind of rally up when the big events are coming? Because you want to get on that biggest stage, right?
Yes, sir. That's kind of the punchline. I had a title shot in mind when I was wrestling. The United States heavyweight title was my goal. And everyone had their own separate ideas of what success was, as they do today.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And let's talk about some different levels of success, because we do have the WrestleMania card kind of coming into focus. And one of the big matches, it's the Usos, probably the most decorated tag team champions of all time. But now they're going at each other. Jay against Jimmy, Yeet against No Yeet. The third time that brothers have faced off in WrestleMania. Marc, what do you think we're going to see out of the Usos going after each other?
I think we're going to get what these two have clamored for wanting to do. They said they wanted to face each other way back when, face-to-face at WrestleMania, and the fact that it's happening is pretty much everything they had wanted to happen come to fruition. I'm looking forward to it. I think we've seen this wave of fans, this groundswell of people right behind Jay, and now with Jimmy being just that thorn in his side, it's going to be something where I think everybody that is going to be invested fan-wise wants to see one succeed. Are we going to get that? We'll see.
Yeah, and what's interesting, and what I thought would be definitely something that would hit home for you, Sonny, the last time there was a pair of brothers who wrestled in the WWE and WrestleMania, it was a couple of guys right from your neighborhood, the Hardy Boys. Matt took on Jeff in WrestleMania. What do you think of the dynamics of brother on brother?
I understand the viewpoint of the fans. The Hardy Boys made it real clear when they started that they would never wrestle each other, and then money talks. So the money was put up, and they put on the boots and went at it, and it ended up being grand entertainment.
Now, how many times do you think when they were growing up, when they were working out for the Usos at the Bloodline compound under the watch of Rikishi and the Wild Samoans, how many times do you think they wrestled each other, or how many times do you think the Hardys went at each other back at the Hardy compound before actually facing off in a match?
Probably over 1 million. They probably practiced a lot. So
Yeah, because I think it's a different dynamic. And Mark, there's so many brother tag teams out there. Uh, Currently, the other one that's making waves in pro wrestling, the EVPs, the Young Bucks, Matthew and Nicholas. And I know from their book that they wrestled each other, like you said, Sonny, literally millions of times in the ring that their dad made for them in their backyard. You should see a couple of guys who know each other better than literally anybody else in the business.
Right.
Uh,
So
Yeah, I think it'll lend to being a great match.
I think it will.
Mark, can you, digging back through wrestling history, can you think of other brother on brother matchups that were huge events that I'm
Well,
missing? Maybe the Briscoes?
well, the Briscoes maybe, but if we're sticking to the WrestleMania theme, I think the first one that hit, and I'm gonna tie the Canadian lineage to this with Brett versus Owen in
Sure.
WrestleMania 10. Wow, I mean that was an underrated classic WrestleMania 10. It wasn't the featured match; it was the one that Owen surprised everybody by beating his brother, and it was so smooth. And I mean, just like Sonny had said, if the Hardys have wrestled each other millions of times, and the Jacksons have wrestled each other millions of times, I could just imagine how many times the Harts, any combination of the entire family, has faced each other
Oh,
under
sure.
Stu, right? So, but who do you trust more than your brother, right? Who's going to take care of you? Who's going to help you with the sequence and how each move is going to work? If you can't depend on your blood, who can you depend on, as they say, right?
Yeah, and kind of lurking in the background of this event is the younger brother, which they're now acknowledging directly on WWE programming that he is the younger brother of the Usos, Solo Sikoa. So you got the third brother as a possible disruptive agent in the match, I guess you could say, because that's really what Solo's done for the most part in the WWE.
He's been the one to upset the apple cart within the bloodline,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, well, I mean, Rikishi's got a steep set of boys that go even beyond Solo. There's younger boys. There's
Yeah,
other relatives. There's Jacob Futt. Like, there, the rumors of if it's the bloodline's rules. I mean, are we going to see Anoa'i's that we don't normally see? Are we going to see former members of MLW and Lance Anoa'i? Is he going to be popping up? Could we see a
sure.
Jacob? Could we see any of these people or a combination for this one night, making it wow, wow, wow? And like, oh my gosh, Rikishi comes up. Maybe he's enough for you two fighting. I'm tired of it. And he
Yeah,
pulls dad rank and he's like, I'm gonna just whip you both. He pulls him by the ear or something.
yeah. Enough of the head of the table. It's me.
Yeah.
Right. And Sonny, another member of the bloodline by marriage who's conspicuous by her absence on the card so far, Naomi.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to
Uh,
seeing it and seeing
she could
what
get in
develops.
there. Yeah. Now, hey, I wanted to ask too because I think this ties into the whole event because you're going to see the main event night 2, the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, person whose family you're real familiar with, going up against the head of the table, the tribal chief, the undisputed Universal Champion of the world, Roman Reigns. Cody's song, the beginning of it is there's more than one royal family in pro wrestling. So, who is the royal family of pro wrestling right now? And are there more than one? Because Roman Reigns and The Rock want you to believe that the bloodline, the Anoa'i clan, is the royal family. Cody's going to say, no, it's the Rhodes family's right up there. What do you think, Sonny? What's your opinion on that? Is there more than one royal family in wrestling?
I think there could be, but I think traditionally it's the Rhodes family. They've been there the longest. They've proven themselves more. Dusty went to WWE and had a run there. And I think this is all feeding back from Dusty's days in the WWE that even made the match possible. So I think it's
Yeah,
Rhodes.
I figured you were going to go with the Rhodes family, and I'm a big Cody Rhodes fan, so I'll weigh in on that. But you got to give Roman and The Rock credit, because you point back to the High Chief Peter Maivia, The Rock's grandmother is getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. She was a big time wrestling promoter.
Yes, sir.
Marc, are we missing a couple of royal families in wrestling? I can think of the Ortons could weigh in there a bit. I guess the Flairs could weigh in a little bit,
Sure.
and the Harts, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've as active families or just families in general. I mean, we've got the Vachons, we've got the Rougeaus. There's, depending on where you're pulling from.
Yeah, there's lots of families in wrestling, but I guess
the Von Erichs between
sure.
Marshall and Ross trying to carry on.
Yeah, they're still going.
Yeah, so that's a story we really hope has a happy ending too, and hopefully success comes to them. And they were successful in MW. So,
well, and they've had some runs in Ring of Honor and AEW of late, so definitely good to see. But I mean, really, in terms of accomplishments, the Bloodline probably stands alone. Cody and Dustin and Dusty have all been tremendously successful, but the volume of wrestlers, I don't think you can match the Bloodline, especially if you extend it out to look at what Jacob Fatu's done in MLW. Yeah, the Wild Samoans, the High Chief, the Rock's dad, Rocky Johnson. You've got an amazing lineage that's really just ingrained in the WWE.
So the question is, does depth determine success, or does achievements? Because I mean, if you look at between what Cody and Dustin, and I'm just kind of being devil's advocate here. So Cody and Dustin and Dusty did, and you compare that, and then you compare what maybe to a lesser extent David Flair, but Ric Flair, and then Charlotte. Flair, their achievements, and then you compare it to the Anoa'i's. Like, is it if titles are a success, or main events the success, or programs? Like, how do we? If you're looking at sheer volume, sure, we could say the Anoa'i, the Bloodline family, the Bloodline themselves. But I mean, there's tons of ways in which you could take it. I mean, if you put Rick and Charlotte alone, that's over 30 titles between them, right? Unofficially, and then, for him is 21, and I think she's 14 or 15. Like, that's 35 championships just to do them.
And then we'll give him Andrade El Idolo by marriage.
There you go. They can add to him, right? That's another one. So if you look at Roosh and Dragon Lee and his father, or if you look at the Mysterios and his Rey Mysterio Jr.'s uncle, and if you look at then there's Santos Escobar and his family. So there's, I mean, we could go in different directions and what success is measured by, right? But
very true. I think we have to give the nod to Cody, if nothing else, for acknowledging the reality that there is more than one royal family in pro wrestling. I think we can safely agree that Cody's right on that.
Agreed.
Now, I want to get into something too that I think is been an issue in wrestling and probably goes back years. The part-time champion, where you have the celebrity come in for the pop, and you wonder, hey, why does this guy have the belt? And we're seeing that right now with the U.S. title. Logan Paul has moved from social media to celebrity boxing to now being the U.S. heavyweight champion. And the guy can go in the ring. He really can. He's a impressive wrestler. He's going to be facing off against Kevin Owens and, talking second generation wrestlers, Randy Orton for the U.S. title. Sonny, how would you guys feel? I mean, the locker room has to be pulling for Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, right? Versus the guy
Right.
who's just come in and gets the title.
Right. I'm going for Randy Orton. I think he's the better of the two, and that's my pick.
Yeah, and he's got that lineage. I mean, Cowboy Bob Orton wasn't even the first wrestling Orton, right? I
Yes, sir.
believe, yeah, Cowboy Bob Orton's dad was a wrestler, so lots of history there too. It's a recurring theme.
And Cowboy Bob Orton's brother, Barry Orton, was also a wrestler.
So what do you think about that, Marc? I mean, what do you think about the celebrity coming in? And you can say, hey, Logan Paul's a social media phenomenon, but the WWE doesn't really need help with social media. They just passed, this is an insane number, 100 million subscribers on their YouTube channel. The WWE has more YouTube subscribers today than Major League Baseball, the National Football League, the NHL, and the NBA added together, plus 20 million.
Wow.
So it makes you wonder, and maybe they really feel, hey, Logan Paul can go.
Well, kudos to guys like him or Bad Bunny and anybody that's sung their praises, because they've put in the work. Yes, they haven't traveled highways and byways to get to where they are, but in the time that they've spent, they just didn't show up. There's preparation to perform to whatever degree. Now, kudos to Logan Paul, super athletic, but honestly, I mean, it's completely a money deal from the acknowledgement of Prime, and they're going to have publicized sponsorship sitting in the center of the ring with the Prime logo. We get that it's marketing and money. It's very different from what the need was before. Like, you could see their shift. Whereas if it's just pure wrestling itself, you don't need all that other stuff. But unfortunately, we're not in that generation. That's the reality of it. We don't have to like it, but unfortunately, it's no more of needed why The Rock has come back. Is it really a necessity? Not necessarily. Much like you said, they achieved what they did without these guys.
Sure. But now I do think, and I like you said, you have to give Logan Paul credit, because I'm thinking, because you guys are on here, I'm looking for that historical tie. Closest thing I can think of was when David Arquette, the actor, became the WCW champion. And to his credit, David Arquette ended up being a viable professional wrestler. But at the time, he had no business having the title. And Logan Paul's not that. He can legitimately go. I really kind of think he's going to hold on to the title, though, because SummerSlam is in his hometown and my hometown, Cleveland, Ohio. And man, I just see him carrying the title into Cleveland, because nothing better than the hometown champion, right?
Oh, agreed. I didn't know that he was the hometown. Honestly, I did not know that he was from Cleveland. Well, egg on my face.
Yeah. He announced that SummerSlam is going to Ohio. Let me ask you.
There has to be some tie-in. There's some rationale for why he announced it, right?
Oh yeah, no, from Cleveland. Now let's look at the other title, which, while the U.S. title has been a part-time champion, the Intercontinental title, different ball game. Gunther is now your longest reigning Intercontinental champion, and he is an old school professional wrestler, taking on Sami Zayn. And when I see Gunther in the ring, Sonny, I think about some of the old WCW wrestlers. He has some Nikita Koloff vibes to him. He has some of that harsh, hard hitting like you would get from the Russian wrestlers back during your era? Do you see a little bit of the Russian Bear, Ivan Koloff, and Gunther?
I do, sir. I'm going for the champion on that one. I think he's been on the block longer and probably has more tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah, and he's got that hard-hitting European style. And Mark, when they brought him up to the main roster and they changed his name because before he was Walter, that got torn to shreds. And as it turns out, like is often the case, you got to give the WWE a little bit of time. And people are loving Gunther, and I mean he's an old school fighting champion that really kind of stands out in today's WWE.
And I think that goes back to what we said earlier about the desire for the more athleticism involved in matches. I think people really like that 20 and 30-minute, 45-minute fight going on still.
Yeah.
To what they paid for.
Well, and he changed his body too. If you look back when he started in NXT Europe, it almost doesn't look like the same person. I mean, heck, he's probably down like 80 pounds.
Yes,
which
sir.
is a lot of work.
It takes work and dedication in the gym. I myself am returning to the gym to do about the same thing, so I can appreciate the hard work and effort.
Oh yeah, Mark, who would you compare our current Intercontinental Champion, the Ring General, to, if we look back for some comps to him?
Well, since we pulled in entertainment with Logan Paul, I mean, if we do a crossover and we look as far as movie heroes, and Sonny and you were talking about the Koloffs, I mean, let's go Rocky IV and say Ivan Drago. I mean,
Ivan Drago, yeah.
If you're really gonna say dominant character that just scoffs at competition, that everyone is below. Like, look at that smug right now. Look at that smirk on his face. If that doesn't exude dominance, like you are beneath me, and he is facing the everyman, the underdog in Sami Zayn, right? Who's so, but even Sami going in is conflicted, right? We saw a lot of people really pulling also for Chad Gable, who was equally as passionate about winning it, right? And there is doubt, so he needs to convince Gunther that he will be that Rocky character. It's funny that we make that comparison. But going into Philadelphia, I just kind of made that analogy, didn't even make the connection until right now.
Absolutely,
but sure. Maybe that is, and I think they were talking about having Stallone involved.
That has been rumored, yeah, and that is a good analogy, because you're going to be looking at the everyman, the man fighting his way up, and the dominant champion who is carrying himself with a different air, right? I like you said, I'm better than you, and I'm going to beat you down. I don't know if he loses to Sami, and I do like the character change with Chad Gable, because Chad Gable is easily one of the best technical wrestlers in the WWE. I mean, he's a legitimate championship level amateur wrestler. The guy can flat go. It's good to see him portrayed now as a legitimate bad man, a guy who can really fight, as opposed to the whole Alpha Academy, where he was basically a comedy character who could wrestle some, but always ended up losing. And Sonny, since you're in here as our analyst who's been in the ring, how often did that happen, where somebody was a terrific amateur technical wrestler, but on the professional side, that really wasn't acknowledged, and they were just kind of whatever character was called upon?
I'd say probably about half the time. A lot of the guys come up that way. I wrestled amateur a little bit before I went professional. and it's the way the promotion runs the angle of the event. You never would have thought that Steamboat and Flair were so closely matched back in the day, but the more you work a couple of guys, the more you bring out the best in them. And it's really good to see the promotion going back to that again, as I've said before. That is the longing of the fan to see the athletic
competition.
return to the
Yeah.
ring.
Well,
That's
and
what
you
I
know what
guess.
I think? I think even at a deeper level, that's the difference between Triple H being in charge and Vince. Because I mean, Vince,
Absolutely.
they weren't allowed to say pro wrestling.
Right. And I think I like the new competitive era that we're approaching in, and we'll see what Triple H does. H himself came up wrestling. I just missed a meeting with Triple H by a couple months when I left out of Ivan's training camp finished, and I was a little down about that for a while. But you know, you never know when you might get to meet him, so you got to stay optimistic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a little bit different, and we're seeing more of that welcoming of pro wrestling in the WWE, even with a little character. Just one more WWE match, and then we'll head over across the wrestling spectrum. But thought this was an interesting one because it's a couple of guys who have gone at it for a long time. One, a highly decorated champion in multiple companies, and the other one, a person who's been there and got close but just hasn't made it all the way to the top. LA Knight, yeah, former Eli Drake, going up against AJ Styles, both of whom had great runs and impact. They're going head to head at WrestleMania. And something that I think is really kind of unfair to LA Knight that's being brought up a lot is saying that, well, he's an imitation of The Rock. And, that just doesn't ring true to me, because in every sport, everyone's kind of an imitation of something else. Everything old is new again. And I think there's plenty of elements of LA Knight that are unique, and he's been this character for 20 years. It was just in TNA, in Impact, or in the NWA where he was Eli Drake. Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think? I mean, is that fair? I mean, I know it's a recurring theme that, hey man, they're copying my gimmick. I mean, would that be a regular issue, a regular talking point in the locker room? Hey, what do you do? You can't do that. That's my thing.
Probably so, sir. I had a prestigious wrestler want to buy my character, and I couldn't see myself selling it because Sonny Cain is my actual family nickname. And I was flattered that he wanted it. Name dropping a little bit, the wrestler was Jeff Hardy. And I said, Jeff, I've wrestled it as it so long now that it's just a part of who I am. And I said, I can't see giving it up for any amount of money. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into it, and it becomes you.
Yeah, but I mean, don't you think that there's elements you take elements from everybody you worked with? And Marc, I know one of the other Hall of Fame inductees is going to be Thunderbolt Patterson, and Dusty Rhodes himself credited Thunderbolt with helping him create his wrestling persona, because the American Dream was a lot different than the Texas Outlaw Dusty Rhodes.
Right. There's a difference in borrowing something, and in my professional opinion, there's a difference in borrowing some ideas and coming out and saying I'm you. So there's a fine line of professionalism there that you have to really walk to put it all together and make it work. And my own character, I borrowed from a couple of people. The man in ManEagle comes from Ric Flair, the man. So
Okay.
I'll go on record as saying that. And I'd watched Flair and Steamboat go so many nights in the ring that on tape and otherwise that I borrowed from some of their ideas once you ran out of ideas. So
Sure.
you go, well, what do we do next?
Yeah.
And the clock's still ticking. So it's back to Flair's cliche of walking that aisle carefully. There's a flattery is the highest form of appreciation, but you don't want to be dominated. I would never want to look on TV and see someone else doing my character without contacting me first. I mean, that's just the way I feel about the situation.
That's fair.
But it's there. It's always been there to a degree. And the blonde hair days of wrestling came from Gorgeous George. My mom knew him personally through my grandfather, her daddy, and hung out with him as a child. He and my grandfather were best friends, and that's where the blonde hair started. So you gotta be careful when you start walking that tightrope, so to speak.
Yeah, everything old is new again. And I was going to ask Marc. I mean, that's been a recurring theme, right? There was Buddy Rogers was the Nature Boy before Ric Flair, and you see it, history repeating itself. Do you think the criticism being leveled online is fair to our friend L.A. Knight, the former Eli Drake, or is it a little bit overblown? Because I definitely see differences in his character versus what The Rock used to do.
I think so too. I agree with you. I mean, the fact that he's able to engage the crowd, I think that's what that people are trying to make this connection to. But he was doing this when he was in Impact, when he was in NWA, when he was using dummy, and he was saying yeah then. I mean, come on, that was who he was. But
yeah,
he was super articulate. He had a system. He brought out clever one-liners. And it's what drew people to him. Triple H has always been a fan of his, and maybe saw this then. Maybe there is that. Maybe being compared to The Rock shouldn't be considered as a detriment, but more of a compliment, because the fact that you're capturing people's interest, you're popping people just by your music playing, let alone what you say, and then everybody hangs on what you say. It's not a bad thing. I think that's jealousy, if anything. People trying to talk that way.
Yeah, and we'll give him that. But I definitely think that, and I'd like to see L.A. Knight get his big win in the showcase, because he's had a few chances in championship matches, and the deck was stacked against him. He was going up against Roman Reigns, and Roman Reigns wasn't losing any time before WrestleMania. Let's move over to All Elite Wrestling, because I did want to ask you guys, has there been a bigger star in their prime move from one company to the other than the CEO now of AEW, Mercedes Moné, former Sasha Banks? She walked out of the WWE along with Naomi, left the women's tag team titles on Triple H's desk and quit. And now she is in AEW, supposedly with the biggest contract ever given to a female wrestler. Has somebody, I'm trying to think of similar issues. Maybe Ric Flair leaving WCW to go to WWE. I can't really think of too many others, or Hulk Hogan leaving WWE to go to WCW.
WCW.
Yeah, those are pretty much, they fall in line. Yeah.
And then is Mercedes Moné on that level?
I think so. In the women's division, waiting to see whose turn it was. I think so. In the women's division, I think she's worked hard to be where she's at, and it's a little bit of a surprise that she's making more to Charlotte Flair right now. But that's a little bit of hearsay, a little bit of we're not sure what the actual truth of it is.
Oh, very, very true. There's no salary cap. You don't really know what's true.
So I looked up the other day what Charlotte made, and it's up there. So if she's beating Charlotte Flair, good for her.
Yeah, and Mercedes has a great story. I mean, her personal story of wanting to be a pro wrestler, going to wrestling school when she weighed 90 pounds, and fighting through injuries to get to where she's at, including coming back from what was a freak, devastating ankle injury similar to the one Adam Cole sustained. And she's back there, and she's she is presented as a star, and she's owning the room. So really, it's a tremendous opportunity. It'll be interesting to see how that change of scenery works, because the best thing you can say right now is there is competition, and you're going to see stars. Her and Cody Rhodes won't be the only ones that are bouncing back and forth between companies.
Those are now that we have the, if I may, now that we have the multiple companies, as we've talked about before, where people could come and go. It's really fantastic to see that there's a bigger intersection now than in my day. In my day, you just had the WWF, and that was it.
Yeah.
And now you got 5-6 places that you can go and hang your hat and make it work. So it's a better deal for the wrestlers, ladies and men and ladies. And I think the ladies overall are being taken more seriously finally than
Yeah.
they have been in years gone by. It's a shame when you look up on women's wrestling that the women are out wrestling the men. So we had that for a little while.
Yeah, no, you're seeing some great women's matches. And heck, last week you had a main event women's match in AEW. Willow Nightingale, kind of tying into the backstory of being the person that Mercedes Moné was wrestling when she broke her ankle, had a main event against Riho on AEW. And then on WWE on Monday Night Raw this past week, you had Becky Lynch, fresh off of a visit to the White House on St. Patrick's Day, in the main event against Nia Jax in a last woman standing match. So had an intense match on WWE with two of the top women in the company. And Mark, I mean, that's something that didn't happen. I mean, it really is kind of a new generation where I think you're going to see an increased emphasis on women's wrestling from both companies now.
And they're going to push for it, which is great, because long are gone the days where women sat idle and just kind of took things. And now the fact that they're pushing for more, they should be pushing for bigger contracts.
Yeah.
And if other women are going to be upset at that, then that means that they're challenging the norm, right? If the norm is that men are the ones doing it, why can't women? We've seen women main event WrestleManias and other pay-per-views as well. Why can't they be earning what it is as well, right? So maybe
Sure.
that pushes a Britt Baker, maybe that pushes a Saraya, maybe that pushes women on the AEW side, but then it pushes and elevates women in the E and puts them in a position. We've yet to really see Jade Cargill now in the WWE.
Yeah.
All the time that she's probably spent developing, let's really see her beyond what we saw at the Royal Rumble, right? So she was their big coup, and I'm sure they're, as a commodity, they really want to make sure she's going to be presented in her absolute best. Rumor is that she faces Bianca at WrestleMania. That is two women who didn't have a wrestling background with tremendous athleticism.
Yep.
If that's the rumored match, I think that's going to be great too.
Yeah, no, that would be a tremendous matchup. And to give credit where credit is due, TNA Wrestling, they have a great women's roster too. They main evented their show this week with Jordan Grace, the Juggernaut, their heavyweight champion, the Knockouts champion, taking on Tasha Steelz. And they have a deep women's roster. Got the quintessential diva, Giselle Shaw. They have the best probably women's tag team division in the industry. So all over, you're seeing a lot of really prominent women's wrestlers. And I wanted to hit one more because while Mercedes Moné is getting a lot of attention and a lot of press, the champion in AEW is Timeless Toni Storm, an actress from before your era of wrestling, Sonny, back during the silent movie era. She's out there getting her close-ups, and she has her butler Luther out there. I like that you're able to have a intense physical match, but also still have some of the characters that make pro wrestling unique. Because what other sport could you have somebody believe that they're a silent movie actress from 50 years ago and appear in black and white, and people go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay."
Well, I think it's fantastic. You have to bring all your elements together. And I'd like to touch on one thing, if I may,
Sure.
on the topic of celebrityism in today's wrestling. We just have so many more tools to work with than what we had when I was doing it back in the 90s and 2000s.
Oh, very true.
You go out and you do something for somebody, and so many people watch it, and then you come back and you're a whole different person, kind of like our previous show, sir. And
Yeah.
These tools weren't available 20, 30 years ago. So I think it brings a new element to the worker, and I think she's fantastic. I like seeing her pay respect to the older wrestlers. I think that's admirable.
Yeah, she's challenging Wendi Richter every chance she gets, which is a good deep reference back to one of the first WWE female superstars. I don't think Wendi Richter is going to come and challenge Timeless Toni Storm, though. She probably has to worry a little bit more about the virtuosa Deonna Purrazzo than Wendi Richter.
Yes, sir. And it's not the first time they've done black and white in wrestling. I think Mr. Marc might can weigh in on this, but I think the very first time they flipped it back to black and white was when Wahoo McDaniels came out and did a match in WCW before getting into the WCW Hall of Fame. And they flipped it back to black and white because he too had wrestled back in the days of old. And that was why, or the yesteryear style of wrestling, and that's why Chief and I wore black and white, was for the black and white days of old. Our ring colors,
Yeah, for the TV.
Yes, sir, for the TV.
Okay, that's neat. No, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, me either. That's great.
Yeah, Chief Wahoo McDaniel. Well, hey, let's as we're winding down here, I wanted to tie back to something we talked about earlier, that wrestling has more than one royal family. Dustin Rhodes runs the Rhodes Wrestling Academy, and they do a showcase show for their students of the Rhodes Wrestling Academy every year. That's premiering this weekend on YouTube. And the two guys you see right there, they're the new Texas Outlaws. Those are Dustin and Cody's nephews, the new Rhodes family. So the generations continue. And you can check out Rhodes Wrestling Academy to see the new Texas Outlaws in the ring.
I had read some of that was occurring and had heard of Dustin's school.
So. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really neat. And the fact that Dustin's still going in the ring, like you said, Marc, it's a heck of a record when you take a look at everything that Dustin's accomplished in his various personas, going all the way back to being the natural back in the old WCW.
Yes, sir. Tried to cue in when I'm supposed to.
Oh yeah.
Things are improving leaps and bounds every day. So we have all kinds of talent coming on board, and I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's great to see another generation of the Rhodes family. And Marc, I mean, Dustin has to be. They're starting to talk about an AEW Hall of Fame. I think Dustin would deserve a spot in there too.
Oh, no doubt. Throwing the names that they have, which were bandied about, it would have been great if Dustin was featured more. I know there's more like he's kind of in the periphery, kind of playing on the outside because he's preoccupied and in a different role. And maybe that's because of where he is at this stage in his career. But it would have been great to see him a little more prominently featured earlier on. But he's in great shape. He's a wonderful asset. With all the talk about there being more than one wrestling family, I would, the fan in me hopes or wishes that some sort of agreement could be worked out between two companies to allow Dustin to be a part of Cody's moments.
Sure.
Because it goes beyond just, if it's monumental for the Rhodes family, the whole idea of presenting the title. It was something that his brother, who's so many years older, never achieved, something his father never achieved. It would be wonderful if he could show or be given permission and they would allow him to appear.
Yeah, or even just allow him to be there like WWE did for Lex Luger, to be in the arena for Sting's last match. That would be good, because really, I didn't even think about it. It slipped my mind until we showed this picture. Another great brother versus brother match. It was that first pay-per-view with All Elite Wrestling. They had some great videos that led up to it, some great packages. Cody against Dustin.
Mm-hmm.
It was a terrific match.
It's far better than their Goldust versus Stardust match.
Yeah,
far better. And they were complete control of how that was going to play out, from the crimson mask that they wore to the promo that was a callback of something that Dusty and Dustin did together to what Cody and Dustin did together, and somebody had spliced them together. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's when he was the natural and he wanted his son back, and there was dissension between father and son, to now there being dissension between brother. So it was very poetic in how they did it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, hey, we're winding down here. It's time to go to the weekly champions. I'll ask each of you guys for your champion of the week. Before we do that, I want to do a quick promo for an interview coming up here on Wrestling Spotlight, talking to the misfortune teller herself, Gypsy Mac. She is doing something that Mercedes Moné did as well, coming back from a severe ankle injury. Gypsy's got 7 screws in her ankle, but she is getting ready to step back into the ring May 4th in Arizona. She's going to be hopping into the ring in Party Hard Wrestling, her first match in almost a year. And I had the chance to sit down and talk with Gypsy Mac about the state of women's wrestling and what it took for her to come back as an independent wrestler, because obviously she didn't have all the medical staff that Mercedes had to work with. So you can see that coming up here this week on Wrestling Spotlight and the Fired Up Network. And you can find her on social media as at the Gypsy Mac. But now let's go ahead. Your weekly champion. Sonny, who's your champion of the week? Anyone in the world of wrestling.
I'd have to go with Cody. I think Cody's got the pull. I think it's his time to shine, and I'd say Cody Rhodes is deserving of finishing his story.
There you go. That's a good one. Can't argue with that. Marc, your champion of the week.
I'm going to go in a very different direction. I'm going to go in a direction where I'm going to pull from indie wrestling and a guy that has the indie god showing up in TNA, the return of Matt Cardona. He's been there, done that, and has become now returning to TNA, not Impact Wrestling. I think we're going to see a whole new scope. He's talk about self-made and making yourself valuable outside of the big leagues or the big promotions. He's talked about making money in just meeting and making relationships and signing a few autographs than he has even appearing on shows. And it's crazy what his value has brought and hustles. And how can you not love somebody that just works and increases their own value when not in a major promotion without having all that other marketing behind them? He did it on his own.
Absolutely. And he's been everywhere.
Yeah, he really has. He really has.
And totally different persona too. Very little of Zack Ryder in what you're seeing right now. And he made his Major Figures podcast a huge hit, just talking about wrestling action figures. So he was able to take his hobby and turn his hobby into a job as well. That is really impressive. I like that one. That's good. And mine, I'm going to stay close to home. Our friend Magic Jake Dumas. Magic Jake has been pushing for a championship in the National Wrestling Alliance, with the Thrillbilly Silas Mason turning in the national championship to go after the world heavyweight title that EC3 holds. Magic Jake is in line for a shot at the national championship. He's trying to bring some character back to wrestling as the magician, and he actually is a licensed magician. But he's taken it seriously in the ring, too. He's dropped 30 pounds in the last couple months because he's trying to get into championship shape. So, Magic Jake Dumas, a friend of Wrestling Spotlight, you get the championship belt of the week for me. We'll give a belt out to the Magic Man, and you can see him trying to get to the national title on the NWA. The championship qualifiers start this week on the CW app. But all good choices, and lots and lots of wrestling news to come here as we wind down the road to WrestleMania. Marc, before we head out, can you let people know where to find the Pro Wrestling Post online?
You can go to ProWrestlingPost.com, where we will feature articles. Right now we're in March, so the focal point, women's wrestling, women's history, women's month. Although we would feature women all the time, we're bringing more attention to it this month more than any other because it is Women's History Month. So we've had pieces on ladies professional wrestling, the association, the promotion that they was once run. We'll have pieces on Sensational Sherry and Wendi Richter. Whether or not she meets Toni Storm's challenge remains to be seen, but we will have a piece on her. We just had something out on Kylie Ray that was out today. We're whether they're in the independents, past, present, future. We've looked at Mildred Burke. We'll continue to explore it and beyond this month, and we're excited about it. Our Facebook page, we're super excited. We've just hit over 10,000 followers.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, we're really, really excited, and we're on our trajectory to 15,000 really, really soon. Real push, and just trying to build the steam and getting people visiting and just appreciating wrestling history. We're not perfect, but we certainly strive to be that, and we're not closed-minded to not make something and pivot from something. But right now, whether it's a piece on Nikita Koloff or something talking about the bloodline, we're all over the board more wrestling has more than one royal family, but it also has more than one way in which you can look at it. So, and that's our approach.
Well, and Sonny, thanks for joining us and giving us that historic approach and tying it into today. Really appreciated you guys taking a look back and a look forward as we're down the road to WrestleMania here on Wrestling Spotlight in the Fired Up Network. Stay tuned for more action from the ring and some talk breaking down what you see in the ring. For Wrestling Spotlight, I'm Gerald Bentley. Thanks.